Hello, everyone, and welcome to Walking Through the Bible. Often, Bible readers can come to the false conclusion that Israel always occupied the land of Canaan, which, of course, upon closer inspection is false. None of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob possessed Canaan, even though they lived in it. And, of course, before these patriarchs lived, Israel as a people didn't exist. It wasn't until the days of Moses and Joshua that Israel would come into possession of this land. But Israel lost possession of this land due to idolatry, resulting in their captivities by Assyria and Babylon. Both conquering nations replaced Israel with other inhabitants, each with their own culture and religion, and so it's no wonder when Judah returned and started building the temple, there was going to be opposition. Let's read now how that opposition began. If you have a Bible, then, you can turn to Ezra chapter 4. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 5. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Ezra chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the descendants of the captivity were building the temple of the Lord God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the fathers' houses and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do, and we have sacrificed to him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here." But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, "You may do nothing with us to build a house for our God, but we alone will build to the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us." Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. The temple in Jerusalem has begun to be rebuilt. We saw in the last lesson that this temple, at least when it was built, was not going to be as grandiose as Solomon's temple. Judah wouldn't have the immense wealth to adorn it like Solomon did, nor did they have all the skilled laborers to fashion it like Solomon did. The temple was being built for function, not for beauty. For what was important was that God was being worshipped according to the law of Moses. This required a holy place of the temple, a most holy place, an altar of incense, and an altar of burnt offering. There would also be the lampstand and the table of showbread. However, the Ark of the Covenant was lost and didn't return from captivity, nor was it remade either. All of this put together meant that the temple of Zerubbabel, when finished, would not be ugly, but it would not be as grand as Solomon's temple was, nor would it be nearly as grand as what Herod would later build just before the time of Christ. The temple would serve its function to worship God in spirit and in truth. This may have not pleased some of those at that time who saw the first temple, but it would please God, who by his providence had stirred up the heart of Cyrus to allow the Jews to return and build him a temple in the first place. Coming to chapter 4, and we find that although Cyrus had given his blessing for the Jews to return and build the temple, that didn't mean that the peoples who lived in that land approved of this. These peoples are called adversaries of Judah and Benjamin here, which is the collective name of all the peoples who settled in Judea. Who were these adversaries? Well, on the map we would see that some of these peoples would be from Ashdod, Samaria, Ammon, and Moab. Of course, all of these names we recognize from earlier studies, though some of the peoples who inhabited these places would be different from our earlier studies, as we'll see in a few moments. In the beginning, it doesn't appear that out-and-out conflict was sought, for some of these adversaries from Samaria came to the leaders of Judah with a proposal. "Let us help you build the temple here in Jerusalem, for we seek your God as you do. For we have sacrificed to him since the days of Esarhaddon, the Assyrian king who ruled after Sennacherib from 681 to 669 BC. Now this statement is a half-truth, for it is true that these people from Samaria did seek after Jehovah, but it is not true that they did so like the Jews would do. The reason we know this is true is because in 2 Kings 17, verses 24 to 41, we read, Then the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in its cities. And it was so, at the beginning of their dwelling there, that they did not fear the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, The nations whom you have removed and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the rituals of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and indeed they are killing them, because they do not know the rituals of the God of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, Send there one of you priests whom you brought from there. Send there one of the priests whom you brought from there. Let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the rituals of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. However, every nation continued to make gods of its own, and put them in the shrines on the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in the cities where they dwelt. The men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth. The men of Cuth made Nergal. The men of Hamath made Ashima. And the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak. And the Sepharvarites burned their children in the fire of Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of the Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord, and from every class they appointed for themselves priests of the high places, who sacrificed for them in the shrines of the high places. They feared the Lord, yet served their own gods, according to the rituals of the nations among whom they were carried away. To this day they continue practicing the former rituals. They do not fear the Lord, nor do they follow the statutes or their ordinances, or the law and the commandment which the Lord had commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, You shall not fear other gods, nor bow down to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord who brought you up from the land of Egypt with great power and an outstretched arm, him shall you fear, him shall you worship, and to him you shall offer sacrifice. And the statutes, the ordinances, the law, the commandment, and the commandment which he wrote for you, you shall be careful to observe forever. You shall not fear other gods. And the covenant that I have made with you, you shall not forget, nor shall you fear other gods. But the Lord your God you shall fear, and he will deliver you from the hand of all your enemies. However, they did not obey, but they followed their former rituals. So these nations fear the Lord, yet serve their carved images. Also their children and their children's children have continued doing as their fathers did, even to this day. After the northern nation of Israel was taken captive, there were two large resettlements during the Assyrian time period. One during Sargon's reign, shortly after the beginning of the captivity that we read of here in 2 Kings, and one during the days of Esarhaddon, the one mentioned in Ezra 4. When these foreigners arrived, they brought their own religion with them. But when God punished them for their outright idolatry, the people pled with Sargon to send them a priest from Israel, that they may know how to worship the God of the land. Now, of course, the priests in Israel weren't worshiping the God of heaven properly, hence their captivity in the first place, but some of them were closer than these foreigners were. What you ended up with, then, was an amalgam of the Israelite religion in an imperfect state with the idol worship that they came to the land with. Their temple was at Mount Gerizim near Shechem, and it is near this place that Jesus would meet the Samaritan woman at the well in John 4, who would ask him where true worship of God should be had. The type of religion that the Samaritans practiced wouldn't have been acceptable to God, no matter if the people thought it was, something that Jesus did tell the woman at the well, for true worship must be done in spirit and in truth. The Samaritans may have sought God with their heart, but not according to truth, making their worship lacking and unacceptable. Now, along with this, these new peoples in the land intermarried with the remnant of Israel that was left in the land following the Assyrian captivity, and what you ended up with was the Samaritans that we see here in Ezra and will meet again in the days of Jesus. So to say that these people sought after Jehovah was correct, but the way they sought after him was incorrect. And that is something that the Jews knew, which is why they opposed the help of these peoples. Judah had just returned from captivity for idolatry, meaning they weren't prepared to receive the aid of idolaters to build a temple to Jehovah, as doing so might tempt them to incorporate the false worship of these surrounding nations into their true worship, thereby incurring God's wrath. But not allowing these peoples to help incurred these people's wrath, for they did not want this temple to rival their own temples, nor the people who worshiped there to claim that all other worship and gods were false, since they weren't done at the temple in Jerusalem to Jehovah alone. It would be one thing if all the peoples would accept that God could be worshipped in their own way, but it would be something else if these Jews were to claim that Jehovah had to be worshipped in Jerusalem according to their law. This caused these peoples to seek to frustrate the rebuilding of the temple for the next 18 years. It started during the days of Cyrus, but since Cyrus was the one who decreed the rebuilding of the temple, they couldn't frustrate the Jews completely then, just slow them down. However, in about 530 BC, 6 years after the temple was started, Cyrus would die, and Cambyses II, Cyrus's son, would reign in his place. And as we will see, it would be during his reign and the reign of his successor Smerdis that Judah's adversaries would succeed in stopping the rebuilding of the temple. It was only when Darius the Great took the throne that the temple would be actually finished. We'll see specifically how Judah's adversaries stopped the rebuilding of the temple, beginning the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Ezra chapter 4, verses 6 to 16, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. We thank you for watching Walking Through the Bible today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But if you like this video, we ask that you consider subscribing to our channel so you won't miss out on other videos in our series, as well as share this video among your friends so that the saving message of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.